This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, happy Fantopia Friday, everyone. I'm Erica Lukes. Always just thrilled to be here with my friends, to look in chat and see Joe and Amy, all of my friends who get in there and are so respectful and kind and to promote the show. I have messages every day coming in from all over the world, and let me tell you, some of them are more interesting than others. It's never a dull moment. I can't believe what I receive, and I just want to say thank you for reaching out to me. I want to also give a shout out to Northern UFOs, who, again, and I should say this every show, he has been instrumental in taking my show and uploading it to YouTube. That means a lot to me because not only do I own a business and have a family and all of these things, but I also spend 30 hours a week on UFO research. And so I appreciate all the help that Northern UFOs can give me. Thank you very much. I want to say hello to Bruce Cornett, who is in chat, and thank my guest this evening for being here. So this evening will be really interesting, and it all started because of a Facebook post that I made almost about 5 days ago, and it was about ethics. And to me, in the field of ufology, we don't see a lot of ethical behavior, and I know that both of my guests tonight feel that we should clean things up, or we need to be really kind of holding people accountable. And I want to get more opinions from each of them as the time progresses. But there were some heated exchanges, as would be expected. One of the exchanges was about the Lonnie Zamora incident, which was an alleged encounter that took place Friday, April 24th in '64 in Socorro, New Mexico. This case is an incredible case. It has been researched by Ray Stanford, who wrote an amazing book. Ray Stanford was on the show, probably a little over a year ago. That was a wonderful episode. I encourage you to listen to it. And Ben Moss and Tony Angiola have been working alongside Ray, have spent several visits out to his place doing research, and they've also been out to Socorro, New Mexico twice. And they'll have some exciting things to say about this. I know that there are people like Frank who have done their own research and have come to the conclusion that this case is a hoax that was perpetrated by a couple students. We're going to dig into that a little bit more, but I'm happy to have both Frank Stalter and Ben Moss here tonight to have a thoughtful discussion about why we differ on this case, and hopefully maybe we'll come to some mutual agreements, maybe not, but it'll be a lively discussion. So first of all, I want to welcome Ben, who has been interested in UFOs most of his life. He has been with MUFON as an investigator since the 90s. He is the chief field investigator for Virginia MUFON. He is a speaker, and he was in Hangar 1 with Tony, and I was so excited to see that. We both spoke, all of us spoke. We did a radio show at the MUFON Symposium a few years ago, and that was fun. Ben has been a great mentor, inspiration. He's a dear friend and colleague, so I have a lot of respect for Ben. Frank Statler is owner since 2009 of the UFO Partisan blog, and it's devoted to UFOs, history, and astronomy. And he first became interested in UFOs during the Gemini program and all through the Apollo moon missions. it first became interested specifically with UFOs during the flap of the 70s with the 1973 Pascagoula, Mississippi abduction case. We could talk about that too. That's a great case, but he has developed this blog. He has great articles. You can go there. He also has opinions about the Socorro case, and like I was saying, his belief is that this is a hoax. And I want to welcome both of you to the show, and thank you for agreeing to be here and having a discussion.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, first of all, I want to get the audience, give a little background on each of you. And so if you don't mind, Ben, if you could just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and how you research cases.
I'm up here in the near the foothills of Virginia. I get cases from MUFON and try to assign most of them to my very good investigators. Having a regular job that takes a lot of time, it's tough to do a lot of investigations. So I try to pick the ones that might need multiple investigators to do multiple things. But so I've been interested since I saw a Walter Cronkite special with my dad a long time ago. That's dating me a little bit. Been hooked ever since, and just try to apply science to this field and figure out what's going on. I have no idea what's going on. Just like with the Socorro case, I couldn't tell you what this thing was or where it was from or anything. But it's interesting. If there's one of these cases that's true, then the world's a much more interesting place, and that's why I'm engaged in this whole subject.
Well, and I've learned so much over the years with regard to researching and investigating from both you and Tony. And I appreciate that because you spend a lot of time, and this isn't like you're just sitting behind a computer screen and making a determination on a case, which unfortunately is how a lot of investigators operate in the field. And probably that's why the field is like it is. But you get out there, you go to these locations, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Thanks. Yeah. It's, you gotta get to the scene of the murder to figure out who the murderer was.
And so Frank, you have a great show that you do. And so give us a little background. I know that you like hockey, but tell us more about yourself and why you like this subject.
Basically, I've been interested since the early 70s, passively, not aggressively. But in 2009, a news story came out about Edgar Mitchell. He made an appearance at the National Press Club. I was aware of him being a UFO buff himself, a believer, involved during his moon flight with psychic experiments and all that. But for whatever reason, it really rekindled my interest. I thought I'd get really a little bit more into it. Started poking around. I decided that one area I really wanted to look at was to go back to the sort of the original source when a lot of UFO stuff was happening, and there were a lot of records available about it. And that's during the Truman administration, and just started poking around the Truman Library, and was able to come up with and I'm glad nobody else found it before I did, but there is a meeting about the D.C. UFO case that was held in the White House. It's on the president's calendar, and was able to find that. And from there, I got hooked. Nothing succeeds like success. I had a little bit of success and just stayed with it.
And that is so cool. I mean, I've been spending time up at the University of Utah Library, the special collections, and going through 200 cubic feet of Dr. Frank Salisbury's work. And you get in there and you do this, and it's like you can't believe what you find. And there are very few people that really have the kind of the gumption to get in there and do that. And that's how really important discoveries are made.
Well, it was online, so I didn't travel out to Missouri to do it, but it was there, and it's been sitting there all along, waiting to be discovered, and I'm just glad I was able to do it.
That's really cool.
And I will add this, that there's a quasi-positive comment about my article at Rational Wiki.
That's incredible. And so what are you like astronomy. Do you have a telescope? Do you go out there and?
No, just binoculars.
Sweet. I've got last night. I've got two telescopes, and I got out there last night, and I love doing that, and I love learning more about that. So that's cool. And you play hockey. So how long have you been playing hockey?
Well, I used to. I'm too old for that now. I stopped. I'm almost 60 now, but I played into my early 40s.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Those are old pictures. If you see any pictures of me playing hockey, they're old now.
I love it. That's a tough sport.
Well, it was fun. It was fun while it lasted. But I needed a productive hobby, and I was too old to play hockey, so I fell into this.
So I want to ask both of you, and Frank, I'll start with you, but what do you feel you've learned from this, and what are your goals for doing your show or doing research?
Well, for the show, we try to get good guests that we think are pretty grounded, that have good information for the people. We try to do our research before we interview them, try to ask them good questions. And like I was telling you before we went on the air, I've learned something new every week. So I'm all into it. I know there's a lot of other podcasts out there, including yours, but we like to think that we hold up our own end.
That's awesome. And like you were saying before we went on air, it's like you get to learn something new with each guest every week. And I think that's really important. And you explore things. And I know for me, my views of the subject have changed drastically from when I entered the field publicly. So it's a learning process for all of us. So if I were to ask you right now, do you believe or do you feel that this is something real? What would you say?
I would say probably yes. I think there's something to it. I think some UFOs are extraterrestrial, but I'm not sure which particular cases, except for one that I'm sure is not. And I guess we'll talk about that one soon enough.
Absolutely, we will. Absolutely. And so Ben, what are your goals with your research, and what are your feelings on this? I know you don't necessarily think with the Socorro case that this is extraterrestrial, but what are your thoughts? Tell us that.
I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. It's my school background was psychology, and so I'm a big reader. I absorb a lot of information by reading and studying. Like I've said before, physics, geology, astronomy, religion, history, quantum physics, and everything that kind of ties into what's going on. So I think I've seen enough evidence that there is some type of advanced civilization operating some type of drive that is way beyond us, that has been filmed and seen in our atmosphere. But these days there's so much fluff out there that the thing that maybe Frank would agree with is it's good to apply new technology to older cases, especially when you have 8mm, 16mm film. So you might be able to see what's an anomaly and what's not by looking at some of these older cases with new technology. Whereas today, the first thing we have to do with cases is figure out, is it CGI? Is it a hoax? Look at the metadata, see what's going on with photographs, and that kind of thing. So.
Okay, thank you. And so let's get to the meat of the show, and let's talk about Socorro. And Ben, I can't think of anybody better to give the audience a background on this case. So if you don't mind, take it away.
Sure. The short version is Lonnie Zamora was on random patrol in April 24th, 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico, and started chasing a speeder. As he's chasing the speeder, and it's a route I've taken a couple of times, basically he hears a roar and then sees a blue something going over towards the desert. And so he abandons the speeder, goes off up what is an incredibly difficult hill, and gets up to the top of this mesa, and then from a site that Tony and I just photographed, has a clear view of where this thing landed, and saw some type of landed egg-shaped craft with two small things in coveralls next to it that next to the creek-side bush were about 4 feet tall. Then he crested the hill. There was nobody to be seen. This object kind of made a roar. He got within, after talking to Ray, he got within 35 feet of this thing, and then he saw a symbol on it, and it made a couple of thuds, like maybe double hole doors closing. And then it lifted up with a roar, and then the roar stopped. You had a whining sound. He's right on top of this thing at this point. He loses his glasses when he rams into the back of a car after the thing makes this loud sound because he thinks it's going to blow up. And then he recovers, and it lifts up. This egg-shaped craft lifts up and then goes silent, then starts heading towards the Perlite Mill, which is off towards the, I think, southwest. And then increases speed and then accelerates almost at a steep angle. And the whole event was maybe 3 minutes long.
Okay, and it's an incredible case. So give us the timeline of who got involved with the investigation and how that unfolded.
Well, as we got to know Ray, we'd been talking to James Fox at the symposium in Cherry Hill in 2012, I think. And he was working on his film 701. I know James. He's a good guy. And he had mentioned Socorro, and I thought he was going to show this footage that I had seen on the TV show Sightings. And so that triggered this whole journey that was one of the covers of the journal when we were searching for the lost Socorro footage that I remembered seeing in the 90s. And so I called every production house there was, Henry Winkler's and ABC and NBC and the UK and all these places. And I found out where it was, but they wanted a lot of money for this footage. So anyway, turns out John Ventry had recorded it on his TV. I got it from him on a CD and then produced it for James to put into his film. And, it's been a long journey getting into this case, but basically in talking to Ray hooked up with us through Jan Harzan at MUFON, and then we started, after we passed the litmus test of going over to Ray's house, we started meeting with Ray and talking to him in detail about the case, and that's when I just got really fascinated with it because he still has some of the evidence from the case. The thing is that there were multiple witnesses. There were three independent calls into the dispatch before the event of people in Albuquerque saying they're seeing a blue flame heading towards the city, and then Lonnie, was pulled off of this chase by something he saw in the sky, which doesn't tie into the whole hoax theory, but we can go down that road. But anyway, there were several booms that were heard by other people. There were sightings that I've put together. There were 13 other sightings of egg-shaped craft in this time frame in '64. One at Hollerman, one at White Sands, several that were photographed. And when Ray had talked to the police officers, they all reported seeing objects, but they would never talk about it because they saw how Lonnie was treated by the police, by the Air Force and the investigators. So the more we dug into the case, the more evidence we found. If you've been to the site, you can see that all the hoax theories just fall apart. There's no way to pull a balloon. There's no way to release a balloon and hide. And some of the info that's been posted on the hoax site that I had referenced before has some outright false statements in it. There were no footprints at the site except for what might have stepped off the craft. They weren't covered in footprints. The bushes were burned from the top down. There was no evidence of pyrotechnics at the site. There was 4 indentations caused by an estimation of a 9-ton object with a perfect quadrilateral burn in the center of a blue flame that melted a creosote bush, which takes, a very high heat to make this thing smolder. It's full of resin. You've got to get a very hot heat. And if this flame played over that bush in, 10 seconds or something and it was leaving the site, that's got to be some type of radiation, some type of radiant radiation that's coming out of that thing and not a propellant, because there was no smoke, no evidence that this thing had any type of propulsive device that we know of. And there was supposedly radiation left at the site. Ted Jordan took pictures. And those were fogged by radiation, and I have Dr. Hynek on a videotape with Ray confirming that those photos were indeed fogged by radiation. So there's a lot of evidence that we've uncovered that just shows the hoax is kind of a stretch.
Well, and this is going to be interesting to hear the other side of the story from Frank, and I want to ask you really quickly, Ben, you had said, and this is from Bruce Cornett, who's in chat, that there was another car present. Was someone else there? Do you know any details about that?
Well, Chavez showed up pretty quickly, and Ray said that the other officers knew that Chavez had seen the craft departing, but Chavez wasn't going to say anything to anybody. Whether he saw it or not is just a story. There's a lot of things that come up when we investigate, and they're still just stories. We heard some interesting ones in Socorro, but from everyone we talked to, there's no evidence. I look for evidence of a hoax, and I have more evidence of an unusual event. I have no evidence of a hoax whatsoever.
And it's interesting. So, Frank, we've got just 3 minutes before break. But when you listen to this, what are your first thoughts?
Well, I've got a lot of detail. If we've only got 3 minutes, why don't I just tell the story about how this all turned up in the first place?
Yeah, do it.
Do that in 3 minutes.
Do it.
Basically, when I first started in this about 9 years ago, what I would do is I would find the work of researchers that I liked, and I'd write them fan letters. One of those guys was Tony Bragalia. So I wrote Tony a fan letter, basically, and mentioned he was doing a lot of work regarding Battelle and some of their studies in metallurgy right after the Roswell incident. And basically, he said, hey, thank you very much. Thanks for the kind words. And if you're ever poking around and you happen to find something related to Clyde Williams, who was in charge of Battelle at the time, let me know. So I go, okay, and I started poking around, and basically what I found was not too much related to anything really interesting, except it got my attention, was a correspondence between Clyde Williams and Linus Pauling. Well, completely unrelated to that, I remember Linus Pauling when he was still alive and running around and talking up vitamin supplements and all that. So I thought, I wonder if there's anything related to Linus Pauling and UFOs. So I Googled it, and sure enough, there was an article at the Oregon State University website, which houses Pauling's papers. And at that website, I don't know how close we're getting to the hard break here.
About 1 minute.
At that website, there was, among other things, the thing that I was most interested in was an outline for a study of UFOs that Pauling had put together. I wrote a separate article about that. But also, there was a note between him and Sterling Colgate, who later became the president of New Mexico, known as Tech now. Back then, it was still the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology. And he asked about the Zamora case. And this is, I've just got to cut you off right there because we are getting ready to go to break, and this is going to get really good. I am so excited. I'm Erica Lukes here with Ben Moss and Frank Statler. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
One of the planet's most powerful antioxidant products is here for you to enjoy. Chaga mushroom tea. This tea has been used as a potent natural health solution for thousands of years. In fact, the Chinese call it king of the herbs. The health value alone is worth a look, as Chaga mushroom tea packs a punch with pure vitality and smooth energy. It's 100% wild-crafted, safe, and effective. Get it now at arcticchaga.com. That's ARCTICCHAGA.com, or call 916-969-2678. That's 916-969-2678. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Order your supply today.
It's great. I think it's great. It's great.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great. Make a note of it. It's great.
This weekend, unplug. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
What is the government hiding, and why? The Truth hits the airwaves Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, with Mac Maloney's Military X-Files.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Plunge deep into the paper trail of classified files. Unlock the secrets the government's been hiding for years. From UFOs to conspiracies, they've got you covered.
With us this morning in the KGFL studios is a local rancher who has a startling story to tell. You found something on your ranch? Some kind of debris?
This wasn't just any debris, sir. This was some metal like nothing I'd ever seen before. This was something from another world.
Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, hosted by Mac Maloney, Commander Cobra, and Juan Juan, along with regular correspondents Switchblade Steve Ward and Emily M. They go where no one else dares to go. Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, now airing Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
At any given moment, your ability to keep your mouth shut, and if necessary, to lie through your teeth, may very well determine the course of history.
They know what's really out there. Shouldn't you?
Hi, Vancouver. George Norrie here, inviting you to join me and producer Tom Danheiser on June 30th at the 4th Annual Architects of the New Paradigm Conference. This will be a groundbreaking, jam-packed event featuring Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, Richard Dolan, Daniel Sheehan, Johnny Enoch, and Victor Vigiani. You don't want to miss this one, so watch the 3-minute video and get tickets at anpconference.com. That's anpconference.com. anpconference.com.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. I'm Erica Lukes. Always happy to be here and looking in chat, seeing my friends. I want to thank you all for reaching out to me and connecting and sharing information about this show. I am here every week because I believe that we need to get good information out there, and there's so little of that in the field. This is an important subject, and it deserves to be treated with respect, and I hope to do my part. I am here tonight. We are talking about the Lonnie Zamora case, which was an alleged UFO encounter that occurred Friday, April 24th, 1964. We are talking to Ben Moss and Frank Statler, who have two different opinions. And when we left off, we were talking to Frank about what he discovered with Linus Pauling, and then we were talking about Sterling. And so let's pick up where we left off right before break.
Right. I got hold of the Pauling website, saw the article that really got my attention, or the part of the article that got my attention, which was Pauling's outline for a UFO study. At that time, and this is 9 years ago again, but even today, science should get more involved. They should take a closer look at this. Well, Linus Pauling was a pretty good scientist. He took a close look at it, and he outlined a UFO study. It's a pretty good document. It would make a pretty good template to at least get started on a serious scientific study of the subject. So I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And I saw the Colgate correspondence with Pauling and thought, okay. So, so I emailed Tony and passed that along to him. And he gets back to me and goes, what about this Socorro case? This is absolutely incredible. Gee, I wonder if this guy Sterling Colgate is still alive. And I said, well, okay, great, whatever. So he emails Colgate. And Colgate responds and says, yeah, it was a hoax. Some students did it, and that was about it. And he wrote that up. And, well, he also added that they were engineering students. And I'm thinking to myself, no way, that's not possible. So Tony publishes his first story. and gets, as you might expect, because he really doesn't at this point have any real evidence except the fact that Colgate told Pauling that it was a hoax. He also contacted some other people. They basically confirmed it. There was another professor out at New Mexico Tech, to keep it short, Frank Getzcorn, who actually invented the nicotine patch, believe it or not. But he was there. It was a hoax. A lot of people have looked at it, a lot of students. They've looked at the case. They kind of figured it out, even who did it, as far as they're concerned. Basically, that's maybe not the consensus, but some people seem to definitely think that it was a hoax. So I go, okay, fine, that's fantastic. But he's starting to get a lot of criticism over it, and everybody's ripping Tony because it's Tony. So you've got pro-UFO people ripping him because obviously they don't like to see one of their cases explained. And because it's already Tony, and he's already writing a lot of pro-UFO stuff, you've got all the skeptics ripping him too. So he's getting it from both sides. My guy's getting killed here a little bit. So I'm looking at this. I'm thinking to myself, what did Zamora see? What did he have to say? He's the guy who was there. Let's take a look at what he had to see or had to say. So, again, very easy to find Zamora's account. It's all over the place online. It's reprinted in full. And Hector Quintanilla, who was the head of Blue Book at the time, it's reprinted in its entirety in his book. And I read through it. I'm thinking to myself, holy man, Tony got this. There is nothing otherworldly described. He never says that he sees anything land. He does see, his attention was drawn. Well, first off, he was drawn down the highway by a younger male, likely a college-age student, likely in cahoots. We don't know that for sure, but I would say it's pretty likely. Drawn down the road. Then he looks off, he sees off to the right. His attention is drawn to a flame in the sky. He hears a loud noise, doesn't see anything land, doesn't see anything otherworldly, drives up the hill, looks down the arroyo when he gets to the right position, sees, again, a circular kind of vehicle-looking thing, a couple humanoids down there. They look a little smallish to him from a distance. NICAP, and I've got some of the NICAP files that I picked up subsequently over the years, and they say he was maybe about roughly 800 feet away, so not quite a quarter mile, maybe a sixth of a mile away. So he's pretty far away, but he sees it, and he's thinking in his report, which when you read it in its entirety, it reads a lot differently than a lot of the UFO accounts that are floating around out there. He drives closer. Now, one key thing is, as he drives closer to where the UFO is, his vision down the arroyo is blocked by a mesa that separates the road from the arroyo. So he can't see down into that arroyo as he's driving closer. He gets closer, Finally, he gets there. He never sees anybody get onto any kind of vehicle, never sees anything like that. Hears another loud boom and sees something begin to fly off. And when he gets close, I've seen maybe 100 feet. Ben's got 35, a little bit closer. Regardless, when he gets closer, he says it looks like a balloon. That's what he tells his partner, Chavez.
Okay.
Myself, that's what it was. He got it right. The witness got it right. He's a good witness.
And I have to just say that a lot of times when somebody is observing a UFO, your first immediate thought is you're trying to rationalize this. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? You're trying to make sense of a really traumatic and mind-blowing experience. And so for him to say that it's a balloon, I mean, who knows what would happen.
Well, he didn't say that. He said it looked like a balloon. But again, jumping ahead a little bit with some further follow-up with Colgate and Tony Bragalia, Colgate did confirm that, it was a hot air balloon.
And so let's talk a little bit, and Ben, I would like you to respond to that. But so let's give us a little background on Anthony Bragalia, because he seems like quite the mystery man, and I'm not quite sure where he's coming from. I know that he endorsed the Roswell slides to begin with, but what else can you tell us about him so we can know the merit of his research?
I don't know enough to discuss Anthony.
I can discuss the Roswell.
I had a short email exchange with him, but other than that.
Yeah, I think this is important because this is the source of some of the research. So, Frank, if you don't mind, just giving the audience a little background on him.
He's a believer. He believes he's a bigger believer than I am. There's no question about it. And I do believe he believed those slides. Right up until the end, right up until the little group with Kurt Collins and I think a fellow named who goes by the name of Nablator got hold of the photo of what turned out to be a mummy, used a piece of software called Smart to Blur, and there was a little placard inside the little glass case that the mummy was held in, and basically solved the case. They solved the case. And Tony was wrong on that one. But there was a lot leading up to that, and they had it looked at. I mean, it's not like those photographs weren't looked at by some other people, including a former NASA Ames scientist who, I don't know if you remember this or not, wrote a fairly lengthy piece. It was equivocal. I mean, he didn't say he was blown away by it or he's convinced that it was an alien. But he also didn't say that it looked like a mummy either. But he wrote a fairly lengthy piece for Frank Warren's site, UFO Chronicles. That's it.
Okay.
So he wrote that, and then when they were putting together that big TV show, Edgar Mitchell got involved. I thought, well, yeah, this has some credibility. Maybe they got it. You never know. But obviously, that turned out not to be the case. But again, I'll vouch for Tony believing that he had something when it turned out that he didn't.
Okay, and that's is good to know. And I know that, that was an interesting case. I will talk about that on another show because I had some pretty firsthand information during that time. I was dealing with Jaime and Tom and Kurt Collins and trying to get a good story together with regard to MUFON Radio and do a fair and balanced piece. And that was an interesting time. We'll have to have another show about that. But Ben, will you respond to some of the things that Frank has said about the case and the way it went?
Okay, Frank, let me ask you this. So it sounds like your research is based off of Anthony's research?
No, not at all. I mean, I really didn't feed off of Anthony's research at all. His research was a feed off of the polling document that I brought to his attention. My research was pretty simple. A lot of people going back and forth online talking about that. There's evidence here. Well, Tony following up saying, well, these guys are saying it's this, and them saying, well, that's just hearsay. And my curiosity was, what did Zamora say? And what he said was basically he didn't describe anything otherworldly, never saw anything land, never saw anybody get into or out of any vehicle, and nothing otherworldly in the way of traces left behind. The landing gear, the marks left in the ground were not symmetrical. They weren't in any kind of perfect square. I know that the idea that the vehicle must have had telescoping legs, which is the only way that array of holes in the ground would have made any sense. I'm just not seeing anything otherworldly. And basically, when you look at what Zamora said he saw, what he never mentioned that he saw, and the overall geography, the fact that his vision is blocked as he's driving closer, you just have to accept too many coincidences to buy into the ET explanation.
Two things I got from that was your entire research was on the internet, and you've never been to the site.
So what?
Okay.
My entire research is leaning very heavily on what Zamora said he saw, and also I've got plenty of NICAP files. I mean, they did come to me subsequent. They came to me within the last couple of years or so. But
let me
there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there
that you're talking about NICAP. The original Blue Book files are the files you should be looking at because this was investigated by Blue Book. You've got a lot of things wrong. You know, I can start with we'll get to Colgate last. Lonnie saw this thing take off, lift off, and fly away. You completely didn't talk about that. When you said he was 800 feet from the target, he was about 160 feet because I just took a picture 2 months ago standing where Lonnie's
He was 160 feet when he first saw
when he crested
down
the
in the
hill.
arroyo?
Yeah, when he crested that hill, when you research cases like this, you find out a lot of things that don't make sense. Lonnie had a brand new car. It was a week old. He shared it with another sheriff. There is no way that I would ever think he would have tried to get up this hill, which you have not seen, in a car that beat up my rental car the 2 times I went there to investigate this unless, because of Lonnie's nature, he thought somebody was in trouble. He thought he had an overturned car or something like that.
That's fine. He's doing his job. He's doing what he's supposed to do.
Exactly. Your comment about the balloon is totally out of context.
No, it isn't. He was closer to it at any point. He was closer.
He never said that when he was close to the balloon. What he said when it was leaving, the dispatcher, Lopez, asked him what it looked like, and he said it's round like a balloon. And an ellipsoid object on end will be round like a balloon was departing. He never said that when he was on the site. When he was on the site, he was freaked out. The guy was so freaked out that his life changed after this event. And the thing is, if you haven't been to the site, nobody could go to that site and then tell me how students pulled this off. First of all, I found the students. They both deny they had any part of this, and they are mad with Colgate for throwing them under the bus. Secondly, I found the emails.
Well, that's neither here nor there. I mean,
I found emails, and I have the emails between Bugali and Colgate, where Colgate says he doesn't know who the students are, but I'll look into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So his whole contention, this whole thing started.
So who is he throwing under the bus? Who is he named? He hasn't named anybody.
Yes, he has, and Bugali has the names, and I tracked both those guys down, and I'm not going to put them on the air because I told him I wouldn't, but he has the names. He gave me initials of one of them, JC. He said, I don't know why that guy threw me under the bus. I'll tell you why, because Colgate said something he shouldn't have said. He had to defend it, and he was not happy with the state police because when he resigned from that university, he was having a battle with the Drug Enforcement Agency because he wouldn't enforce the drug use at the college. And the students that I interviewed in Socorro said that he was fine of, getting high, which is not a big deal.
And what does it have to do with what happened in April of '64?
Because all you people that discuss this memo, which is speculation, say because he's a Nobel Prize winner and a scientist that he wouldn't lie. But the point is that he was defending this whole thing started when he told somebody it has to be a hoax because they can't get here from there. That's what started this whole thing. Then I have his document saying where he said, well, it was a candle in a balloon. If you'd been to the site, if you released a balloon at the weather that's always going on there, this southwest wind blowing hard the other direction, if you released a balloon, it would disappear right away. The ballooning agency, who I reached out to, said that you don't fly balloons in the morning when you have a 40-mile-an-hour gust. You fly them at 6:30 at night when the...
Well, this case happened in the afternoon. So what are you talking about, the morning? This case happened in the afternoon.
I'm sorry, I got that backwards. He said you don't fly these things in the evening when the winds are blowing. You fly them in the morning, which is where you see balloon races and things. They always start early in the morning. Sorry, I got that backwards. But the point is that the evidence on site shows that there was an object. There were 3 reports that were...
Well, there was an object. I agree with that because Zamora said that there was an object. Nobody's questioning that. But as far as landing gear, you're talking about they're asymmetrical. One of the supposed landing gear, which it wasn't. If you look at, I've got a drawing here. I can pass it along. I'd be happy to do that. At the top of the page, let's say that's number A. From A and going clockwise to B, that's 13 and 2.5 inches away. Then the from B to C, you've got that one's 9 and 7.5 inches, 9 feet 7.5 inches away.
Again, you don't know the history of when Hynek talked to when he
even Ray Stanford accepts that that's a fact. I've got a drawing from Ray where he's got these telescopes.
I have the drawing. It was a self-leveling craft that corrected for where the blast came out. It was the perfect center of gravity for where those pods were displayed.
I'm not so sure about that, but okay.
And well, that's in the Blue Book report. You keep citing NICAP. NICAP got their stuff by interviewing people that weren't part of Blue Book. Blue Book files were found on Craigslist by a gentleman out of Ohio that I got a hold of that were from Captain Moreno, who was part of Blue Book. In those files, it discusses how baffled they were. The first thing they looked at
were baffled. They were absolutely baffled.
Scientists dismissed the hoax right away. If you think two students who, by the way, don't know each other in life, I also found that out, that hoax this thing, and you've never been to the site, you could spend $100,000 and not create the hoax that Lonnie described. There's no way that a magical balloon went into a 40-mile-an-hour wind and then disappeared over the Perlite Mill, which is about 10 miles away. That right there, and the fact that what drew them, what was the blue thing that Lonnie saw on the road that drew him to the site? If this balloon was on the ground, what was that?
Some kind of pyrotechnics. I wasn't there.
Pyrotechnics, of course. There were no pyrotechnics found at the site by the Blue Book investigators.
It was well up in the air. There's no reason that the pyrotechnics were launched at the actual site either. They could have been launched in the area. They could have been launched somewhere far away.
Oh, man.
That we don't know.
You know, we're on the same path. We're trying to figure this out. But, man, if you haven't been to the site...
But you can't just say you haven't been to the site when you try
because there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. If you were two guys in a balloon, there's nowhere to go. This mesa goes down. There's a dynamite shack that was there. I found the remains of that. That's what the craft passed over.
It wasn't that they had to go anywhere. They had time to go.
So I'm going to interrupt you guys.
Was flummoxed by the explosions.
Really quickly, and I want to go back to this because Frank, you had said that it's neither here nor there that there was perhaps potential drug use at play, and I want to say that Bragalia. I mean, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there an attempt to make Lonnie look like a drunk?
Bragalia had some very fabricated information on his site. He said that Lonnie was a drunk. I talked to the bartender that retired with a PhD. He said that Lonnie was only in the bar to break up fights. He never drank. He said there were footprints found at the site all over the place from teenagers, totally untrue by the Blue Book files. He said there were pyrotechnics found at the site, totally untrue by the Blue Book files, and Captain Holder on the video stating that. And he said the bush was burned from the ground up, also totally wrong from the Blue Book files. So I don't know why he presented those as fact, but I've gone out and done the hard research. All those facts are wrong. And I found the students that Colgate referenced, they both don't know each other. They said they weren't involved in this case. Colgate boxed himself in their corners trying to put a square peg in a round hole and had to back up. But I also have emails with him and Bragalia that say, you keep putting words in my mouth, and I don't like what you just printed about me. And so there was a big issue between those two dudes because he was not reporting what was actually said.
And so I want to throw this in there, too, because there is another researcher who worked with him during the Roswell Slides incident, and apparently there was a pretty big parting of ways, and this researcher said on social media that Bragalia wrote several people claiming that he was an alcoholic, that he had harassed Edgar Mitchell, and other things all were untrue. So Bragalia seems to have a pattern of claiming people were something when they're not, and I think that lends to his credibility.
Well, nobody's questioning the authenticity of the document.
Right, it's speculation.
Yeah, but it was a lead, okay? That's what researchers do. They follow up leads. It was a lead, and it led me to take a closer look at what Zamora said, and despite all the you haven't really presented any evidence to indicate that this is any kind of an otherworldly vehicle.
Well, all right. I mean, you've reiterated things that are incorrect. You know, he didn't say it was a balloon when he was on the site.
I didn't say that he said that. Now you're misrepresenting what I said. I said that when he got closest to the balloon, he said it looks like a balloon. I believe he got it right. He did say that. It's right in his original Blue Book report.
He said it as it was leaving when he called the dispatch. He was looking at the object.
Not the original Blue Book report. I mean, it's printed in Quintanilla's book. It's online. It's easy to find.
Well, you know, we can agree to disagree there, but, you know, The one thing that is, first of all, the students deny it, so I don't know where your argument's coming from. You didn't know that Colgate had named names. That's a big red flag right there.
It's not a red flag because what I've looked at in the case that I'm presenting has nothing to do with Tony Bragalia, except that I found the original lead, passed it along to him. He followed up on it and got what he got.
Now
I've got what I've got. You're not debating Tony Bragalia. You're debating me. Okay.
You just said that you read his stuff on his site.
No, that's what happens when you don't have a good case. See, that's what happens. You try. You're bringing Tony Bragalia into this.
Well, you know what?
I'm not debating Tony Bragalia. That's not my name. My name is Frank Stalter. Okay.
But I think though, and I think we need to, make this pretty clear. When somebody is presenting evidence and people are working off of that and learning things from it and making assumptions based on that person's work, if their credibility or, maybe throw in the fact that they're using a pseudonym or different things, you can't vet the sources. And then you've got other people that are painting a narrative. This seems to be the MO. We absolutely have to call into question Anthony Bragalia, I think.
It doesn't have anything to do with what Zamora saw. Tony Bragalia wasn't in Socorro in April of '64.
But you're using
all he did was follow up with Colgate. That is it. That's what he did, and he wrote up what he found. He followed up with some other people too. That's really about what he did, and he continued to follow up with them, and subsequently, he left it alone for quite a few years. Followed up with Colgate. Colgate followed up with him and said, I stick to that. It was a hoax. So,
and there is that music. We're going to take a break. Maybe cool off, have a margarita. I'm Erica Lukes here with Frank Statler and Ed Moss. The best is yet to come, as you can tell. We'll be right back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, welcome back, and my, hasn't it been a lively discussion this evening? We are hoping that Anthony Bragalia calls back. He was on the line waiting, so please call back. We would love to hear from you. We know that you don't usually call in or do this sort of thing, so please call back. We'd love to hear your response. I'm here with Frank Statler and Ben Moss, two completely opposing opinions on Socorro. And I want to talk a little bit about the NICAP reports. And so, Frank, tell us what you gleaned specifically from the NICAP reports.
Well, basically, a lot of those reports, Ray Stanford was the main researcher for NICAP on the case. So, his material, Coral Lorenzen was involved. They believed it. There's no question about that. They believed it was an ET case. But again, there's nothing in there that indicates to me that there was anything otherworldly. Ray did find a sample that he thought looked like a metal. There wasn't much of it. They got it tested. It turned out to be a silicate. Some of the and there were other people also who went down to Socorro. Remember, this attracted a lot of attention. James McDonald went there subsequently later on. I don't know if he was associated with anyone or he just did it on his own, but he talked to at least Chavez. One thing that I thought was pretty interesting when speaking to Chavez, and this is a letter from McDonald. Found Chavez at his home. First asked him if the ground was smoldering when he arrived. He said it was not, that there were ashes all over the ground and they were cool to the touch. However, he emphasized that there was smoke visible in the wash and that one of the mesquites was still smoldering. He said those bushes are hard to set fire. Maybe a blowtorch, something that you might use to fill a hot air balloon, would do it. But they're always green and hard to burn. So I thought that was interesting.
But he also said after that sentence, he also said he did not doubt Zamora's word in any way.
I don't think any of us do we? I don't.
And that's what McDonald said right after.
Exactly. So if you don't have that in front of you, you got to.
I do. Have it in front of me.
But nobody's doubting Zamora. I mean, Zamora is the reason I'm convinced it was a hoax. Absolutely. It wasn't until I read his account that I believed that it was a hoax. I didn't think it was. I was skeptical. I'm skeptical of everything.
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, but what do you think? I mean, what if you about McDonald and all of these people coming into play? What were their thoughts? Give us, especially like Hector Quintanilla, who was captain of the United States Air Force. I mean, but he's had an interesting, very colorful role with regard to all of the Blue Book cases. So what are your thoughts?
I don't think that Quintanilla or Hynek, there's no reason to, I don't see anything in there that they thought it was ET, but they didn't come up with an explanation. It's still unexplained. So I'm not really sure why. I think I would have gone at he saw a balloon launch. I think that's what I would have gone with. They didn't pull the trigger on any kind of an explanation. They let it go at that. And one other thing that I do think I have to think about how I want to put this, but it seemed that there was a real condescending attitude towards Zamora from the outside investigators, at least from the Air Force. They didn't seem to hold him in very high regard. They believed him. They believed what happened to him. But for some reason, they just didn't hold him in high regard. And maybe, just maybe, that played some role in their sort of dismissing his mentioning that it looked like a balloon when he got really close to it.
So Ben, what do you think about Hynek? Because you had told me specifically that when Hynek was on the scene, he did tell us about that.
Just to address what was just said, there's still nobody's explained how this balloon flew into a 40-mile-an-hour wind and then, went 10 miles down and went straight up. So that's another point. Hynek, with regards to the metal in the rock, that just kind of tells me that there's a lack of homework here, because what happened was Hynek, Zamora, and Ray Stanford were near one of the imprints, and Lonnie looked down and said, that looks like a rock that was scraped by the landing gear. There was a rock that was broken in half. I have both photographs of the rock in the hole and the rock after it was taken out, and I photographed the rock itself. And so Ray took that to Goddard, and Dr. Frankel analyzed it at Goddard and got in touch with Ray and said it was an unusual metal, and that, if he found certain properties, he would publish it. And what happened was, he said it was a zinc iron alloy, but the way it was combined didn't conform to any chart.
And I hate to cut you off right there, but Anthony Bergelia is on the line. Oh, dang it, he hung up. Oh, Anthony, I'm so sorry. Okay, last time, call back. I will pick that up.
So
I apologize. So go ahead, Ben.
Sorry. What happened was, he said he had all the charts from Soviet Union and all the other countries, and it just was combined in a way that's unusual. Because we know, most of the materials that are out there, we do discover new ones, but most of the things we know, that come from fusion in the sun, and we're aware of those materials. It's just that if they're combined in a different way, like a meteorite, when it passes through the atmosphere, has certain properties that it's extraterrestrial, but you also know it passed through the atmosphere. But with regards to this metal, it was very unusual. And then Frankel went dark, and when Ray called him back, they were supposed to take half the sample. They took the whole sample, and they said it was silica. Well, there's no way to confuse silica, which is sand and glass, basically, with metal. And we have photos before Ray took the picture in there of the rolled up metal when this gear, when this landing pad slid down the rock, it peeled off this corrosive this material. And there's a picture of it. It's obviously metal that's rolled up. The one thing Frankel did say was that he found that the coating on this that was in the rock was a non-corrosive element that would have been excellent for the outside of a spacecraft because, it wouldn't corrode. It was like gold. Nothing affected it. But, and Frank, I believe we're looking for the same truth, but the facts of the case, just don't hold up. The fact that Colgate's letter is based on two students he named that I found had nothing to do with it kind of shows you that Colgate was speculating, and there's no truth to that when you look at the research.
Well, Zamora wasn't speculating, and that's what I base my opinion on. He never saw anything land. His vision was obstructed between the time he first saw the object and when he got the closest.
But he saw it lift off and take off.
He did see it lift off and take off because that's what balloons do.
Into a 40-mile-an-hour wind?
Winds change. Winds shift.
Here's another point. If you'd been on site, like I have, the wind is constant from that direction. It's constant. It's about 25 to 35 miles an hour. It doesn't shift. The weather data from that day and the weather data that Blue Book got said a stiff 35 to 40 mile per hour winds out of the direction of travel of this magical balloon. I went in, I really wanted to find that there was evidence of a student hoax, and everything led to a dead end. And let me just read something real quick that I share with Erica for you, Frank. This is from New Mexico Tech. From C.B. Moore, the professor of atmospheric physics and chairman of the Langmuir Laboratory.
Charles Moore.
Right. It's to Mr. Kenneth Firestone. Dear Mr. Firestone, in response to your letter of April 27, 1981, the Terminal Effects Program has been in operation at the Institute since 1947. Most of the various aircraft components that are used in the testing have arrived in the period since the early 1950s. Those are the answers to the only questions that I can establish that you have asked. In regard to the unidentified sighting by officers of Moore...
you guys, I apologize for that. I'm trying to get Tony back on the line. So hopefully that will happen. Again, I apologize for not getting him on there quickly. But if, Ben, I want to say if Tony were to call back, like what questions would you have for him specifically with regard to the research he has put forth on Socorro?
When you came on, I was reading the letter from New Mexico Tech that I shared with you.
Great.
So the point I was getting to is this last part from the atmospheric physics chairman, who said, in regards to the unidentified sighting by officers of Moore in 1964, I have investigated this on my own and can assure you that there is little probability that it had anything to do with students or the Institute. If we can believe officers of Moore, and there is no reason except for the strangeness of the observation that we should not, then it appears that he saw a lunar landing module, but his first observation was at least 12 months before the module was first tested here. So another professor from New Mexico Tech denying that it had anything to do with students at that institute.
And that's fine. That's his opinion. But he thought it was a lunar module or some kind of experimental lander.
Right, which wasn't flying in that time frame.
Exactly. And so, I don't know of any off the top of my head with telescoping legs.
Okay, so I'm hoping Tina, has Tony called back at all yet? Okay, well, we're hoping he will call back, so we'll just see how that rolls out. So, okay, boys, continue. I'm so sorry.
Well, the other thing that, and Frank, did you get a chance to read my first article in the MUFON Journal?
I did not.
Okay. Suggested reading, just so we can kind of be on the same page. The other point that I wanted to make was that with regards to this case is that everybody that was there at the time and you know, this whole area, there were multiple sightings of egg-shaped craft. There was a landing at Hollerman. There was a landing at White Sands. All this information came from military sources. And so in this time frame, if you draw a line from Albuquerque through Socorro and keep going, you know, that 60 west route, which is an interesting drive because of all the UFO history there, you do see that there were multiple sightings of this similar or football or bathtub or egg-shaped craft at that time. And regardless of if this was a one-off case with Lonnie, that shows that there was something going on in this time frame with that type of craft. Because I know that egg-shaped craft are fairly rare, and craft with symbols on them is extremely rare. And that's what makes this case so unusual. The balloon theory about this balloon that New Mexico State University flew, I found that image before Bogali did, by the way. But that thing was not flowing at that time in 1964 with that logo on the side of it. So I'm just saying that all the evidence I found shows that the Colgate letter was not true, that the multiple witnesses corroborate the Opal Grinder. We haven't even talked about the people that showed up at Opal Grinder's gas station and said the thing nearly hit their car. I talked to his son. He was there at the time. He said the thing that he remembered, and what was interesting was when I asked Mr. Grinder's son, did the guy in the car, it was a couple with 3 kids, did they describe the craft? And, you know, he had a great chance to embellish the story. He goes, no, they didn't. They just said, you know, it almost hit the car and it was a funny looking, if it was a helicopter, it's kind of funny looking. But the thing he remembered the most was that the guy was really freaked out. And that's what I got from all the people that knew Lonnie, was that he was never the same after this incident. And I just don't see a situation where a balloon, which Lonnie would have recognized, would cause his life to change after this event and have him be so upset that when Chavez showed up and he said, Lonnie, you look white, which is, you know, Lonnie was Hispanic. He said, you look like you've seen the devil. And Lonnie reported that, I think I have. I mean, that just shows you the level of fright this guy had. And I just don't see a balloon causing that.
But he doesn't say that he saw something otherworldly when he's anywhere between 35 and 100 feet away from the object. He didn't say that.
I didn't say otherworldly. I said that when he was so frightened by what he saw as a devout Catholic, that I think that his first impression was when he went to his preacher, he thought he'd seen a demon. And he spent 2 to 3 hours after the Chavez finally let him off early after he got grilled the night of the event. He went to the preacher, and the preacher told him, he said, because Lonnie couldn't stop thinking about it. He said, look, you can do one of 2 things. You can stop talking about it, or you can tell the truth. And Lonnie decided to tell the same tale, the same story over and over, never embellishing it. But in his later years, he did say, when he was asked about the 2 things in white coveralls, he said, you know, I don't think those creatures were from anywhere around here. Now, that could be embellishment or whatever.
Well, I did see a segment on Unsolved Mysteries about the case where at the end he does say they weren't from around here. They were. I think he knew that they were. But that's neither here nor there. I don't see that as being really significant.
Well, if you know Lonnie's character, and, you know, I talked to his daughter at length. I talked to his best friends at length. You know, the guy was just a down-to-earth, simple guy.
Yeah, nobody's saying otherwise. Nobody's saying otherwise. He was held in all the accounts that I've seen. He was held up.
He had seen a balloon, he would have said later in life, he would have said, you know, that was probably a balloon.
But I want to go back to the fact, and I've got to state this again. I mean, what, didn't Bergelia say that he was a drunk? I mean, weren't there some allegations that he was a drinker?
That.
Okay.
He wrote that. So, and Lonnie does mention his lack of drinking during his original Blue Book account. to me, it doesn't matter. I don't care.
Well, it doesn't matter, but it matters enough to Brigelia to bring that up.
Right.
And so
again, it's not the Tony Brigelia case. It's not the Opal Grinder Anonymous customer case. It's the Lonnie Zamora case.
Well, but when you're taking information from an investigator and he's using things to kind of smear another person, you do have to look at that. Absolutely. And so
I consider
he'll call back and he can answer himself.
I consider Lonnie Zamora a fantastic witness. I hear nothing but nonsense from a lot of people citing possibly flawed studies about how witnesses are no good, witnesses are terrible. This guy was a great witness. And
so,
he never said at any point that I'm aware of, at least not on the record, that he thought he saw something otherworldly.
Having said that, why would Lonnie not be able to say, oh, that's a balloon, I can see the flame, I can see the two guys in it? If Lonnie was such a great guy, which I know he was, how come he couldn't figure out that he was looking at a balloon?
How do you know that he didn't? How do you know that?
Because he wouldn't lie about it. He wouldn't freak out and go to his preacher and spend 3 hours there.
Maybe not right away. You're talking about what happened right away in the moment. Over time, I expect that he did. That was one of the things, I believe it was McDonald, but I'll have to go back and confirm that, who did speak to him directly. And McDonald was under the impression that Zamora figured out what he saw. But, I mean, again, that's just his impression. I never met the guy. I don't know that you ever did. I think he did. I think he knew. He certainly didn't see anything otherworldly. I think he did eventually.
So he's not saying otherworldly, and so I think that's kind of misleading to throw the baby out with the bathwater when you're saying he didn't say something otherworldly. He felt that there was something that was demonic. This was so out of his norm that he had to go see his preacher for 3 hours. He was traumatized.
Sure, it was a shocking thing. There were explosions going on, a vehicle lifting off, and then from there, things got worse for the poor guy, But he said, I didn't think it was an object from outer space because I don't believe in those things.
And so that's just discounting that this was something that was unusual or anomalous?
Well, of course it's unusual and anomalous. How often do students go out and lure policemen to a particular site and launch balloons and set off noisemakers and pyrotechnics?
Let me ask that directly right away, because since you haven't been to the site, launching a balloon and doing all the things that couldn't have happened because there's nowhere to go. There were no footprints found by the Blue Book team. So all these guys scrambling to get into this balloon, this exhaust from the balloon would have burned a trail through the desert as it was trying to gain altitude and been a continuous roar, whereas Lonnie said it lifted up, went silent, and then silently departed, slowly gaining altitude into a 40-mile-an-hour wind. Everything you've based this on is Colgate, who initially said he didn't know who did this. Then
Now you're misrepresenting what I'm saying. I'm basing it on what Zamora said, and also
which you have wrong. He did not say it looked like a balloon when he was encountering the object. He said it looked like a balloon when it left.
Right in his original Blue Book report. It's right in there.
Man.
It's in there. It's reprinted in Quintanilla's book. It's reprinted in multiple sources. That's what he said. It looks like a balloon. He, meaning Chavez, asked, "What is it?" I answered, "It looks like a balloon."
Need to look at
and again, when you're having a traumatic experience, when you see something, and I mean, just like the MUFON report form or any report form, and you're asked to explain what this looks like, and so what in your brain does this look like? A, B, C, or D? So of course, in his mind, he's going to say it looks like a balloon. I mean,
is it not also at least possible that it was that he got it right, that it looked like a balloon because it was a balloon? If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Well, I think that I would say that's pretty when it comes to something that we can't rationalize, that we can't explain. To say it looks like a duck or walks like a duck, that's pretty short-sighted.
An ellipsoid object seen on end will look like a balloon because you'll see a round shape. That's what he saw. The ellipsoid football-shaped object departing on end looks like a balloon. That's when he stated it, not when he encountered it on the ground. When he described a symbol of four landing gear.
He was much further away. He said it looked like a car from a distance.
So do you ever read Jacques Vallée? I mean, that he specifically, there are researchers that I hold in very high esteem that talk about mimicry. So, I mean, we've got a lot of different things to talk about, and I think it really, in my opinion, to just say, okay, it was a balloon, done. I mean, when we get back from break, I'm going to talk about a couple cases that were of mine with radar data that people said that skyhook balloons, Chinese lanterns.
No radar data on this case. Not to interrupt, but no radar data on this case.
Yeah, well, I've got radar data, and I can tell you stories. I'm Erica Lukes here with Ben Stalter and Ben Moss. We will be back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
In the shadows, a voice cries out. Evidence that you're not alone.
You said my name. What is your name?
Proof that the living and the dead coexist. Or do they? Every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, join writer, producer, and paranormal investigator Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio as he explores, interviews, and investigates evidence alongside some of the best in the paranormal community and beyond.
6 people killed.
Ghost Box Radio, Wednesday nights exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, because the dead don't sleep. Ghost Box Radio.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
There is a world outside that which we live in. A realm where fact and fiction collide. The Paradigm Matrix. The Paradigm Matrix. Hosted by Willie Miranda. Every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room.
The 1-hour show that will surely leave you hanging on the edge of the rabbit hole. The Paradigm Matrix explores a universe of topics from UFOs, cryptozoology, conspiracies, as well as all things paranormal.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed.
Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The Paradigm Matrix, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, where fact and fiction collide. You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to UFO Classified. I knew this was going to be a lively show tonight, and I have no doubt that my show next week is going to be equally as lively. I will be talking to Barry Littleton, who is an incredible friend. I met him at E. SETI Ranch. He is one of the few black experiencers that I know of, and in my opinion, there's a very disturbing trend afoot in ufology, and I want to discuss that with him. So I will be looking forward to that. I hope you tune in. Tonight, the show is all about the Lonnie Zamora incident, which took place Friday, April 24th, 1964. This was a case that involved a Socorro police officer who was on duty, who saw incredible things, but that is up for debate. But I will say J. Allen Hynek and James McDonald, several noteworthy people were involved with this. And so I want to continue where we left off. And I keep saying, please, Anthony Bergelia, call in, because we would love to hear more about where you're coming from on this. Ray Stanford has been a guest on my show, and he wrote a book that, Ben, you actually gave me a few years ago at one of the MUFON symposiums. It's called Socorro, Saucer in a Pentagon Pantry, which is a great book. But Ben, so keep going.
I have a little story about that. I've met with Diana one time. I talked to her, Lonnie's daughter, and when she asked Lonnie, when he was still alive, what actually happened. This was like 2008, I think. I believe he passed in 2009. But she asked Lonnie what really happened. He pointed to Ray's book, which he had a signed, a copy of, and he said that's the only guy that got it right. And the thing about Lonnie is, to his end of days, he stayed to the same story. He didn't see a balloon. Lonnie would have admitted it. The kind of character that Lonnie had was he couldn't live with anything that he obscured or felt like he had falsified. And that's why this whole incident occurred. He thought he was going on a rescue. He took a brand new car into an area. He saw something that totally changed his life. The people that I talked to, and I talked to people that were very close to Lonnie, said that he was never the same after this. And if he knew it just baffles me that you can promote this as a hoax when you haven't been to the site, and not a single person can tell me how this hoax was accomplished, because there was radioactivity for a half-life of maybe 6 hours, which is unusual for radioactivity, that I have Hynek on film confirming that Ted Jordan's film was followed by radiation. We have the metal that Ray ran into Ray's that got it all the time, because Ray was just all over all the national news with his discovery at Goddard for the footprints in 110 million year old, basically a piece of poop. But, Ray ran into a gentleman that didn't know anything about Socorro, and told Ray, when Ray had mentioned he knew Dr. Frankel, that he goes, oh, that's the guy that got sent to the woodshed for investigating UFO metal. And that's just an incredible story, because the guy didn't know anything about the case and just mentioned that to Ray at lunch one day. Ray has lunch there all the time. And there's just a lot of anecdotal stories like that. There's stories, but there's still people that randomly say things that confirm this story. And another one happened when we spoke at the MUFON Symposium in 2016. I had a gentleman come up to me, gave me his card. I checked him out. He was a radiation specialist in Socorro at White Sands, and he ran into Lonnie in a gift shop, and Lonnie, I think the guy had a badge on or something, but Lonnie started talking to him and found out he was a radiation specialist, and he started telling him about the event that the guy didn't know anything about. But Lonnie's concern when he was talking to him was, do you think I got a dose of radiation? And that's just another one of these anecdotal stories that shows you that Lonnie, late into his life, was still asking questions about what happened to him.
And so I want to say, because we were talking about debunkers. Phil Klass did go to Socorro several years after, and then he claimed that the incident was caused by a dust devil. So
later, a class for discharge.
Yeah, and so we've got all of this going on, and then we go back to the Project Mogul balloons. I mean, I've heard the Skyhook balloons. Now it's the Google Loon balloons, and it's absolutely crazy to me. I'm just going to tell you really quick. I had a case. There was a mass sighting in Utah in 2014. During the day, I was contacted by a news agency, and there were hundreds of people in Utah that witnessed 5 to 7 objects over Salt Lake Valley for upwards of an hour, and they were hovering in place. And the next day they were seen in Colorado. This was really interesting, so I pulled radar data. I had Bill Puckett, Robert Powell help me with this. Got the radar data, did a lot of research, and it was really interesting to me to see how people, even though there was no transponder data, even though they weren't launching Google Loon balloons in the area at the time, or even in the country at the time, they weren't launching 5 of them. Balloons are not capable of doing hovering and then moving off in different directions. And we've got the weather balloons or Google Loon balloons that are not visible to the naked eye because they shouldn't be hovering at 30,000 feet. So there were so many red flags to me, but it was amazing to see the people involved with this who are involved with MUFON, who are researchers that discounted it and said they were Google Loon balloons, even though there was no proof that they were. And so I look at a case like Socorro and I think, okay, well, I mean, I guess we can say it looks like a duck and talks like a duck and walks like a duck, but that seems to be the easy way out. And when you really dig in and you get radar data and you call the FAA and you figure out A, B, C, and D, I mean, there's much more going on.
If you want to see what the duck's doing, you got to get in the pond with him.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Frank, what is your feeling on that? Because you think, I mean, like a lot of people do, and I'm not saying that's not a valid viewpoint, but when you see something, I mean, your logical thought, your first thought is, okay, this is a Chinese lantern, this is a balloon with a candle in it. I mean, what would it take to prove to you that that's not, in fact, what it was?
Otherworldly flight characteristics. That would be one thing, and Zamora never described that.
But so define otherworldly flight characteristics.
Making right angle turns at supersonic speeds, that type of thing. Incredible speeds. The type of thing that there are some really good UFO cases out there, and there is physical evidence in the form of radar to back them up.
So, Ben, what do you say makes this case exquisite? One of the best cases that you've ever seen?
Well, Frank was right on about, anomalous movement. I'm always baffled that, people are just not doing their homework. The famous Chilean, aircraft ejecting the black matter that was touted as a UFO was just a flight hitting a condensation trail that when you did the FAA reports, you could find the exact flight that traveled that path, but it was promoted on multiple TV shows as a UFO when it was just an airplane. And so you really, with fake news, I mean, Trump talks about fake news, but my God, in the UFO field, that's where we really encounter fake news. And that's why cases are so hard, because you have to first go into any of these cases with photographic or video evidence and try to figure out if it's a hoax or not. That's the first thing you got to do. Look at the metadata. Look at anomalous activity. What's interesting is a lot of these things that I see that truly look like they're anomalous is if you have a, say, 300-foot craft that is filmed at a dead stop in the atmosphere. Well, that's unusual right there, unless you're talking about a balloon. But then if it accelerates and changes direction and it's warping the space around it, and you have plasma generations around it, or it's changing the environment behind it, well, then you have evidence of some type of exotic propulsion. And those are the things we look for in videos and even older videos, which I've seen in older films. If you ever watch the space shuttle take off, it'll produce some incredible waves through the air and Faraday rings and all kinds of things because of all the electromagnetic events and propulsion and disturbance of the air that's going on. But that's the key, really, is you got to look for anomalous, exotic movement and evidence of some type of propulsion that just doesn't seem like it's a man-made object. And with regards to Socorro, we have a knifing blue flame that ignited a creosote bush that Frank admitted takes a lot of heat to do. After playing,
it takes about the same a blowtorch, which is something you could use to inflate a balloon.
Right, and and the Blue Book report says that this thing was from the top down, but didn't have any evidence of an accelerant, which a blowtorch would produce. It didn't have any evidence of any pyrotechnics or accelerants or gasoline or kerosene or anything like that. You would have had that residue from a blowtorch, but when you kind of look into the Socorro case and go on site and do the homework, I can't find anybody that can tell me how this hoax was pulled off. If anybody can explain that, then you might have an argument. But until you've been to the site, you can't figure it out. You're not going to be able to tell me how this thing happened.
It's not that complicated. He was chasing a speeder who led him to the area. His attention was drawn to a flame over the general vicinity where they had the craft. He drives up a hill. He looks down the arroyo. He sees two individuals and what proved to be a balloon. And when he drove closer, the individuals had their opportunity to stage their getaway. And the balloon was launched along with some additional noisemakers that scared Zamora, sent him scrambling in the opposite direction. He loses his glasses. He gets back up again. He looks off in the distance. He sees the balloon vanishing, still without his glasses. There's just nothing otherworldly in the entire scenario.
So Ben, how many people looked at this case and said that this was an important case?
Well, that was like a parallel fictional rendition that I just heard, but
Zamora's rendition. What are you talking about? Zamora's rendition. That's what he said.
You still have your time frames wrong.
Did he say that they were students that were?
Oh, he didn't say that part.
Throwing off noisemakers.
That came from Colgate, but it does fit. It fits what Zamora said he saw.
Well,
it fits a lot better than his T spacecraft.
I talked to students at New Mexico Tech. They said that Lonnie was pretty much a nice guy. He would let them off for speeding tickets, and if anybody wanted to pull anything on him, they would have deflated his tires, but they usually didn't do anything.
Well, Hynek wrote that.
Now, student hoax, I've talked to students there. It was a small enrollment. They didn't hang out in the Socorro Desert. There's no way they could have pulled Lonnie into the exact spot with a pyrotechnic in hair. That's just absurd.
Well, what does he describe? He doesn't see any kind of. What was the purpose for the flame that he saw in the sky if it wasn't part of the vehicle? And it wasn't, because he never said that he saw a vehicle across the road and
he saw a blue flame heading into the desert. Three other people independently.
He didn't see it. He didn't say he saw anything. He didn't say it was moving. He just said that he saw the flame.
So are you a debunker, Frank? I've got to just ask you this: are you a debunker? Because I'm not saying that there's anything that is being presented here that when you look at Ben and he's talked to all of these witnesses, he's talked to the people that were supposedly the students that Colgate was talking about.
When did he talk to these students? He talked to them when? 2000 and whatever?
2 months ago.
What are they saying? The townspeople say essentially the same thing. The townspeople are saying essentially the same thing.
So did you talk to the townspeople? Who talked to the townspeople? Bergalia? Who won't call back?
Bergalia admitted he's never been to the site. And then he told me in an email that he believes it was a car towing a balloon, which is so ludicrous that you can't drive a car 5 feet without.
Again, Bergalia is not here, and I am. And
I would
absolutely fits a balloon leaving the area, launching the area.
So when's the last time you did that in the desert? Because I think you should go to Socorro in that area that Ben has been to twice, when there would be no way that you're going to do that. I mean,
Hynek was there in the moment. He didn't come up with the solution. He considered hoax, but he blew it off because the reason Hynek blew off the hoax scenario was because he didn't think anybody who did something like that would keep their mouth shut, that they wouldn't talk. There are plenty of hoaxes on record that were discovered later. They still don't know who did them.
So you're a debunker.
That's not true. Hynek said that when he responded to Donald Menzel, that he said, look, hoaxes and hallucinations do not produce these deep holes in the ground, do not burn creosote bushes in half. That you keep embellishing things that are not.
No, I'm not embellishing anything. I'm going by the facts from the people who were there at the time, not people you're talking to 2 months ago. This happened over 50 years ago. Okay,
so here's a question from Tony from Texas. If kids were playing with pyros, wouldn't a cop be able to tell the difference because they draw guns in self-defense?
There's no way of knowing what he knew about what he knew or didn't know about pyrotechnics.
Pyrotechnics have a very distinct smell, and it would have been noticed right away.
So I have to ask Frank. So you've got a cop who served admirably, and the people in the town.
Army veteran, also.
Yeah, an Army veteran, and so. Without
so what?
So what?
Whether he was an Army veteran or whether he got kicked out of the Army for
he's familiar with explosives.
Conduct. Whether he was sober as a judge or whether he was drunk, it doesn't matter. When you read his testimony, when you read his original,
I mean, I think there's doing
you
research.
You dismissed the key piece of evidence, which is his testimony, which is his original account.
But
you dismissed that.
But when you're a researcher, when you're like looking into something, you see this testimony, and then you decide to dig further, and then you go out and you interview witnesses, or you put the pieces together. And I think Ben and Tony
unfortunately, I didn't come across this information until more than 40 years after it happened.
But would you say that what Ben and Tony have
the claim that you're making is like criticizing an historian who wrote a book about Thomas Jefferson because he did not interview Thomas Jefferson. It's a silly argument, to be blunt about it. You should go. You wrote a book about Thomas Jefferson. You didn't talk to Thomas Jefferson. How can you do that? Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
So you're a debunker. Let's just get this straight. You are a debunker. You're not willing to look at facts.
Not addressing the facts. He's using anecdotes and playing.
I'm addressing the things that were discovered on the ground, the irregular landing patterns, which you tap dance around.
They were not irregular. I've already told you that.
They were not irregular. They were absolutely irregular. Even Ray Stanford admits as much. Not
they
irregular.
Were found to be
14 feet 9 inches, then 13 feet 2 inches, 9 feet 7 inches.
Self-leveling vehicle.
How do you know that? That's just something that's just
came in at the angle. The imprints showed that the object came in at an angle, and when it took off at an angle. Those are wedge-shaped prints that no vehicle on Earth and no balloon.
Where does Morris say that it took off at an angle? Where does he say that?
The evidence of the imprints by Blue Book says that specifically.
No, you're saying that. It's
in Blue Book. You haven't read Blue Book, obviously.
Okay, so let me ask you, Frank, how much time have you spent with Frank? How much time have you spent at the site? How much time have you spent talking to witnesses? So you haven't. So basically, you're a debunker.
So basically, you brought me on the show to run me down?
You know what? I'm saying you're running all of the work that Ben has done down. You're not willing to look at some of these facts or say, okay, well, wait a minute. There might be something to this.
Provide some interesting facts. Provide some interesting facts. It's a lot of innuendo. An anonymous witness talked to a gas station owner. A guy approached me at a MUFON concert.
So what do you do as a good investigative researcher? What do you do to get facts? You look online and look at Anthony Bergelia's work?
I think I do interviews on a weekly basis, or at least a semi-regular basis with some of the top researchers in the field. I think I do that.
And so a person needs evidence, even if it's for a hoax. So
how do you categorize Zamora's original Blue Book account? What do you call that? What is it?
I call it a Blue Book report.
It's evidence. Come on now. See, every point that I bring up,
look at that as evidence, but you're not looking at anything else as evidence.
Tap dance around it.
So
it's evidence.
You're parsing out evidence. So you're picking evidence.
Supply some
to fit your
evidence,
narrative.
But he hasn't supplied any evidence. What do you supply? Here's some evidence. The landing pads were irregular. That's evidence. Even Ray Stanford admits that they were not symmetrical. Oh well, it must have had telescoping legs. No, that's not evidence. That's conjecture. That's not evidence.
Nobody ever described telescoping legs. That's a fabrication.
That's not a fabrication. I've got a drawing right here looking at it by Ray Stanford himself. So now
no, that's a recreation. That is not verbatim. That's a recreation.
Yeah, it's an attempt to explain something that clearly doesn't point to any kind of extraterrestrial vehicle landing there.
I don't think he said it was extraterrestrial. He never said it was extraterrestrial. That's your.
Well, then what was it?
Well, who knows what it was? I mean, why would you put
all the evidence points to a non-earthly object? I could never tell you where it was from or what it was, but
it's non-earthly, then it would be extraterrestrial.
You have to imagine.
Terrestrial. No. Let me finish.
Wait. Let me make a point here.
This past 2 hours has been a tap dance, so let me finish. Okay. Everything from you has been a tap dance. Extraterrestrial means otherworldly. It's the same thing. Terrestrial, which on Earth refers to Earth. It's not from Earth.
What does that have to do with the case? What does that have to do with the case? You're basing the whole case on the Blue Book report. You're not looking at any of the evidence or any of the witness interviews, and you're basing.
You're misrepresenting. The evidence is Lonnie Zamora's account.
And so none of the other people involved matter?
There's multiple witnesses, multiple reports, multiple physical evidence.
I don't doubt that other people saw things as well. Why wouldn't they? Something was there. I don't deny that. I don't deny that other people heard.
On a string.
I don't deny that.
So what is your interest
But he's your great witness when it's convenient for you, and when the facts become difficult for you, it becomes a tap dance.
Only when you don't have the facts correct, which you mostly haven't had this entire episode. So, I don't know.
What facts have I not had correct? What facts have I not had?
You keep describing things that Lonnie said that were not said at that time.
They're in his account. They're in his Blue Book account. You said I should. Just look. Look at the Blue Book files.
Okay,
I'm
gentlemen.
His Blue Book account.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's funny that somebody that sits in front of a computer is making statements based on things he read that's never been in the field, that has no feel for the landing site. That's incredible, and it just tells me all I really need to know that you really don't know what you're talking about.
All I really need to know is I've talked to you for 2 hours, and it's been 2 hours of dancing from you, a lot of innuendo, a lot of speculation.
No, I've stated facts, I've read letters, I've given you reports. You can keep making this whatever you want it to be, but I have research and documents that specifically show this was not a hoax.
Well, the bottom line is it's unidentified. It can't be asserted. It's extraterrestrial. It's unidentified. And I will say,
solved 9 years ago. Student balloon launch.
Solved 9 years ago. Well, I mean, again, I would, love Anthony Bergalia to come on the show next week, and maybe you can come on there too, and then talk about how both of you can overlook all of the witness testimony and overlook, to me. So why? I just want to say, hang on.
You keep misrepresenting what I'm saying, and I can't have that.
I can't have the fact that you're getting into the UFO game and you're trying to interview people, and then you're at the same breath you're so concerned about your ego that you're discrediting witnesses, or you're discrediting the work of Ben Moss or Tony. I think that's
which witnesses am I discrediting?
Why are you?
Am I discrediting the witness? I've been saying straight for 2 hours. Yeah, believe the witness, Lonnie Zamora.
Yeah.
You're not listening? Were you not paying attention?
No, I was listening and I was paying attention, and I've been paying attention to everything else that you've said. So basically, at the end of the day, you're a debunker and you're in this for your ego, right?
That is a ridiculous question. It's very insulting. It really is.
I think
no one else. Everybody else had the opportunity to find a White House meeting about the 52 DC case sitting out there in plain sight. Didn't do it. Anybody else had the
That's great. We should talk about that, and you should be more respectful to people that have done work. I'm Erica Lukes here with Frank Stalter and Ben Moss. Wow, what a show.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.